What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nano. Today I will be building my dream PC. This cost me 10 grand, so without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about the build. I chose the Asus ROG Strix C79E motherboard, and I will be pairing with the new Intel i9 3900K, which has 24 cores and 32 threads, using DDR5 6000 MHz with CL30. And of course the Asus Strix RTX 4090, Samsung 92 Pros, 3TB worth of M.2s, and then the new RTX 3.0 power supply by Thermaltake, and using the EK Quantum pump and reservoir combo, the EK Quantum Velocity CPU block, using Corsair Hardline series, the gold color fittings, Corsair 480mm radiator with Corsair clear fluid actually, and a Corsair 12mm outer diameter PETG tube with Corsair hardline bending kit, and a leak tester, which is really important, and then a film bottle, and a Cooler Master 120mm fans. So first things first, it's important to open up the case and remove all the side panels so you have maximum space to work with, and then make sure to leave it on a nice flat surface. Separate the necessary screws that you need before you begin your build. So when placing the motherboard, make sure to align the IO shield with the back plate, and all the 9 screws are visible before you screw them in. And when you're ready, tighten all the 9 screws one by one. So here's me preparing to update the motherboard BIOS by simply connecting the 24 pin and then downloading the latest Asus motherboard BIOS into a USB flash drive, and then plugging it into the specific BIOS flash USB port, and then hold the flashback button for about 3 to 4 seconds, and then you should see a green flashlight start flashing. In about 5 minutes later, the green flashing light would stop flashing. That means your motherboard has successfully updated. So prepare and place the CPU. Make sure to open the CPU retention lever, and then place the CPU gold color arrow facing or pointing the arrow on the motherboard. And once you close the retention lever again, the CPU cover would actually easily pop out. Means the CPU has perfectly installed. It's important that you read the motherboard manual. It will show you that exactly which slots to fill in if you're using dual channel. Place your RAM stick in, push it down with your thumb one side first, then the other, until the retention lever closes back by itself. Give it a nice wiggle and make sure the RAM is perfectly placed in, and the RAM will go in only in one way, and make sure the RAM retention levers are fully locked back in by itself. So installing the M.2 drives, make sure to remove all the heatsinks or whichever slots that you're using, and make sure to remove the thermal pads at the back of the heatsinks before you place them in. Slowly slide the M.2s in and use the M.2 retention levers to hold the M.2s in place, and give it a thorough look. Make sure everything is set before you close them off. So prepare the radiators. Make sure before you begin your water loop to use distilled water to flush the radiator out and look for any leaks. And once there's no leaks, then we can actually begin installing the fans. So it's a simple process. Use the screws that comes with the radiator, place the fans on top of it and screw it in, and align it on to the top of the case, and use the screws that comes with the case and make sure it's fully secured. So prepare the CPU water block. Make sure to unbox it and unscrew the back plate, and use the thermal paste that comes with the CPU water block. Applying thermal paste onto the CPU, just gently apply a little bit of thermal paste at the top, and I used a piece of plastic to evenly spread the thermal paste. So when installing the CPU water block, make sure to align the screws with the back plate and gently press it in and screw it in. So now to the most important part, figuring out your water loop flow direction. Once you have figured that out, then you can actually begin bending your tubes.
So when bending tubes, make sure to maintain a good constant distance from the heater, and then keep rotating as you go. So in about 45 seconds you should start seeing a small wobble at the point where you're heating. When that happens, move the tube away from the heater, but just constantly keep rotating, and then when it begins to bend by itself, then use the Corsair hardline kit and bend the tube according to the degrees that you want, and then hold it in for about a minute until it cools off, and you should have your perfect angle. So use the small gadget comes with the Corsair hardline kit to hold your tube in. Saw off whatever the length that you want. Use one of the sharpeners to smooth out the inside of the tube and then the outside of the tube before you install them in. And if you don't, this could actually damage the O-rings and the fittings. And once you have done that, you can actually use tap water and then use distilled water to flush out the tubes. So when measuring tube length, make sure always use a ruler or your thumb so you have a good measurement of how much centimeters you need to cut. As you can see here, I'm using my thumb to see how much to cut off. Always remember, when you're cutting your tubes, always cut it long. If you cut it short, in case, you will have no choice but to redo it all over again. So when tightening your fittings, make sure you have plugged in all the tubes in, and once you're happy with everything, then begin tightening your fittings. And when you're tightening the fittings, make sure you use your fingers, don't use any pliers to tighten them. As long as it's finger tightened, it should be perfect. So when using the Corsair leak tester, make sure your loop is fully closed off. Once it's done, then install the leak tester on top of the reservoir. Then slowly pressurize the pump all the way up to about 0.5 to 0.6 psi, and wait for about 5 minutes. If the pressure doesn't drop, then your loop is fully sealed. So before you fill in your loop, make sure to get some paper towels and put them around your motherboard, CPU, all the way around your fittings, in case if water do leaks, you do not want them to drop on your components. So when you're ready, slowly start pouring coolant into the reservoir using the Corsair filling bottle. While this is happening, keep an eye out for any water leaking through the fittings or through the radiator. Before turning on the power supply, make sure double check all the fittings if they're properly tightened, and then when you're ready, connect the 24-pin jumper and turn on the power supply and watch the water level drop all the way to the bottom of the reservoir. And when it hits the bottom, quickly turn off the power supply and then wait for the water to stabilize, and then repeat. You will get to a stage where there's constant water flowing through the radiator into the reservoir. When that happens, keep the power supply on and watch out for any leaks. Loop is completed. Make sure to fill up the reservoir again with more coolant all the way to the top, and make sure to unscrew one of the ports at the top of the reservoir, which will provide positive pressure into the reservoir and it will help you get rid of all the bubbles pretty fast. So that's about it for filling up the loop, and enjoy the final build. Thank you for watching my first ever water-cooled build PC. As you can see, I had so much fun building this PC. Comment down below, let me know what games do you want me to test out for the benchmarking video in terms of settings, 4K or 1080p, what graphic settings you want me to turn on and turn off. And once again, thanks for watching guys. See you guys in the next one.